How early did you jump on board? Was it not until this series, or was it?
Oh, I was on
back in the. It was back in Swiss. Yeah,
I was on when the music video came out, dude. Like, it was so sick. I think as soon as T1 made it to Worlds in the most stressful fashion of all time, and then Heavy as the Crown came out, and I watched it like 40 times in a row, and just like seeing Faker look so cool, I'm like, yep, they got to win now.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 8, Episode 35. The semifinals literally just ended. I just got back to the hotel. And surprise, spoilers. If you're tuning into Dive and you don't want spoilers, then too bad. T1 are back in finals.
What are you doing? Yeah, honestly, it's kind of crazy. I can't say I didn't expect it, but it's just one of those things that it's so weird because everything I watched from T1 this year was just them getting their asses beat by Gen G and like barely qualifying for Worlds and all of this stuff. And it's like all logic dictates that this should just be like the series was yesterday where BLG just beats them, right? Gen G had beaten T1 10 times in a row domestically, and BLG now has an 11-game winning streak against Weibo. Like, it should have been kind of the same series, but T1, it just doesn't matter, man. You go to Worlds, they're just a different beast. And like the plot armor, I think as much as people like to meme on all these storylines, I feel like that stuff gets in their opponents' heads where it's just like, oh God, we're playing against T1. Like, we can't possibly beat them. It's Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, once you get it,
you're totally right. I feel like you start doubting yourself and start doing weird stuff. And, I don't know. I mean, it seemed inevitable to me. I was a little scared in Game 4, for sure. But, no, I mean, everything's right in the world.
after the team fight at Dragon? Is that
yeah,
when you got a little scared?
Even just picking Pyke in general, like, I don't get it. You know, it worked for Keria before. I was like, this dude wants a world skin, whatever. Like, but both games felt kind of the same. They picked Pyke, and it did pretty well early. You know, they're up like 7k gold, but any gold on Pyke to me feels somewhat fake when it comes to a team fight, because his champion is he's not even a champion. He doesn't tank anything. His damage is really small. His team fighting is so useless.
He can't really engage.
So, yeah, he's just... the fact that they're winning with Pyke is crazy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it legitimately has a really strong early game and mid game, but when it comes to 5v5s, I think it is so hard to play. Like, that Dragon fight was a perfect example where you can't just walk forward at them as Pyke and then just, like, channel your bone skewer. You're just going to get engaged on and instantly die, right? So, like, he was trying to play from that flank where he's trying to play above the banana brush by Red Buff, like below the dragon, and he's trying to like hook over the wall at Pays, but then Pays just flashes forward. Keria not a part of the fight at all, and they just get roasted at that fight. And that I did think from there, I thought Gen G was going to be able to win. And honestly, watching that game, I was kind of having that dreaded feeling of like, oh God, it's a 5-game series where blue side wins all 5 games and T1 win. Like, isn't that what it's going to be? So I was kind of happy in a way that T1 won, and that was a red side win. So it wasn't just one of those series where people just can only talk about, side selection winning the entire series. But yeah, I got nervous for T1 in Game 4 for sure. Because late game Pyke, when it's 5v5 time, it is rough.
I just felt like they had complete mental control of Gen G. Like, in the beginning of the series, when Gen G, like the first play, I remember them feeling like really uncoordinated was
the failed dive on Zeus.
Well, that one, that was really early. And that was the beginning of Lehen's playing poorly. That was the very beginning because he missed his Zenith Blade.
That was like literally wasn't that game 1 like the first play?
It was literally the first play of the
that's
first
when
game.
he started.
That's when
bad.
It started.
It was really when he got to his computer and tried to log in, but there was a typo on the login. That's where it really started going.
It really started there, and let me tell you, it continued. It continued for a lot of the series, all of the series, pretty much. But was really thinking of the team play. The one that stood out to me so much was the grubs that they then contested.
Oh, when they were down a member?
Yeah, remember the series? They have it was game 3. They had Genji had the Nocturne. They actually gave up Skarner, by the way, in draft.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do the Jax plus Skarner that was given to them, and they went for Nocturne instead. And then you're looking at the setup, and you're like, oh, this is actually going to be a double TP with Keen and Chovy teleporting in, and Nocturne's going to ult, so then Faker can't join, and they're going to kill them at these Grubs fight. But then Keen, that's one of those moments where you really want to hear the comms, because looking from outside perspective, I'm like, which one do I blame? Did Keen just go in early? Why did they not do an actual double teleport? Why did they not actually do the Nocturne ultimate early? Because then Keen just jumps in, and then like they get engaged on. Owner's like, boom, okay, great. Vi engage into the Renata ult that then goes over to, and you're like,
Faker TP'd before the Nocturne ult came out. There's no denial. It's like everything went bad.
Yeah, it seemed like an uncharacteristically weak performance from Genji that series. Yeah, like you said, I don't know, they just seem really uncoordinated. The Nocturne game from Canyon too was, I don't know if he just couldn't find good ults or something, but I swear I was just looking for his ult the whole game, and he just like, he pressed that like a couple times the whole game. It was like, I think Gragas Akali, so not necessarily the easiest people to set up on, but I mean, he just got no value out of the pick.
Yeah, and I mean, he even went Hexplate, and it's like, when you're going ulti CDR build and you're like not finding any angles to do it, it is definitely feeling rough. I mean, honestly, T1 though on the other side, I think played a really good series. Like a lot of these guys are looking really, really good. Zeus was definitely making them look foolish on the Gragas a few times. I think Faker had a strong series. Like across the board, it felt like they played really well. It did feel, even though Game 4 felt like, okay, maybe they're going to come back a bit, overall it felt like a pretty one-sided series. Like it felt like T1 the majority of the time were kind of dominating them. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't know. It's just hard to explain because it just feels so counter to what I've seen from them from so much of the year, but they just do it every time. So it's so ridiculously impressive. And now they've qualified for Worlds Finals. That's the third straight year they'll be in World Finals. And they have the potential to go back to back. They already, obviously, in the past, as T1, went, not this exact roster, but Faker was there, went back to back. And they would be they're the only team to have gone back to back. They could go back to back twice before any other team in the world has won Worlds twice. Like, that is insane. That is absolutely insane. And, you know, no one even has a chance to go back to back this year, obviously. So no one could even potentially match it until next year. Like, even if BLG wins, they can't even have a chance of matching that. So it's just like, it's so ridiculous that it really, at this point, I feel like does feel as though it is another T1 dynasty. Like the SKT1 era was truly a dynasty where they were just running the show internationally for years. And I feel like it's kind of back to that point now. I almost don't even really care about how they've done in the LCK and that wasn't as dominant. The fact that you made 3 straight World Finals, I think that's a dynasty. I think we're in the like second era of T1. And the fact that Faker was the mid laner for both eras, like 7 years apart, is just so insane, right? Like, it's not just a flash in the pan. He didn't just, you know, randomly get to a finals and have a good performance where he got carried by 4 teammates. It's like they are there 3 straight years. And even amongst all these rumors that were there last year where, oh, maybe the roster's breaking up, then they win Worlds. And then there was all these rumors this year, oh, maybe the roster's going to break up. Maybe they're just not that good anymore. And then they make World Finals again.
Dude, I feel so lucky to get to experience this because, you know, I feel like for as long as League goes on, it's going to be a long time since there'll ever be something else like Faker in T1. I mean, it's just history in the making 100%. Like, this level of dominance, not even just in League or esports, in any kind of competitive field, you know, traditional sports, whatever, is insane. Like, this guy is larger than life, and we actually get to experience it in real time, just watching him do his thing. It's so sick. Like, I love it.
Yeah. I think the coolest part is that there have been multiple chapters, right? And there was a long break, and there are worlds that he hasn't qualified for. And I know I just want to bring up the like Samsung White and Samsung Galaxy, because I know people are gonna be like, oh well, technically that's a team that has won twice before. But then you have to get into all the nitpicking of debating, buying slots and rebrandings and all that stuff, which
That's
is
fair.
lame.
That's fair.
But I think really focusing on this actual roster of players is just such a crazy story, because remember last year before they won, they were doing like interviews and stuff, and we were like, oh man, it's gonna be so sad when this roster breaks up, because they've had so much success. They won a lot, but they also got a lot of second place and stuff. And then they won World Finals. I was like, whoa, they're sticking together. That's crazy. And then this year, people were like, oh, well, for sure this roster is going to break up, right? And now they make another World Finals? What if they win again? Are they actually going to break up? Can you, like, keep this pack of players, this legendary pack of players together again? Like, they're not guaranteed to win that finals, of course. I think BLG are going to stand a very good chance. But if they do, like, are we making movies here or what?
I feel like they will stay together if they win again. And I mean, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but like all the rumors are and everything I've heard is that the LPL teams are not paying anywhere like they used to. And we're going to talk about some roster stuff later, but obviously that plays a little bit into, to Ruler leaving JDG and potential rumors about him maybe wanting to go back to the LCK and so on. But that's what I've heard from a lot of different people, that, LPL isn't paying like it used to. And oftentimes in the past, when, these teams won a world championship, sometimes you get offered an absolute bag from the LPL to go play there. And I don't think that is going to be waiting now necessarily for these T1 players if all the rumors are correct. So I feel like, where would you go? You know what I mean? It's like, unless you think you're going to be creating some other super team, like Ruler comes back and you're going to try to do something crazy or whatever. But I don't really see why you would want to leave if you can't make way more money somewhere else and you just won 2 straight worlds with the roster, right? Like, I just don't see the incentive. You're on the most popular team in the world by a mile. You're, by all accounts, making a ton of money already. The most popular team. Like, I don't know. It just seems like if you win again, it kind of fixes any and all issues. You just keep going.
Yeah, I don't think any roster moves would come from the players wanting to leave, unless it was, something in the team wasn't working and they wanted to make a change for that reason. But it doesn't really seem like the case. Obviously, they're really good. They keep making it to finals, and I think their play styles complement each other really well too. Just the way they play, it's super unique. Every time I watch T1 play, I swear, I almost never like T1's drafts. If I was playing and I had their draft, I'd be like, dude, how do you play this, right? Like, game 1, you're playing this kind of somewhat hard engage comp with Ashe, Vi, and your targets to engage on are all tanks. And it's just, how do you win this? And then they just make it work every time. They're so good at just, I don't know, they don't play normally. It's hard to even put your finger on what they do. I think they just, pressure so well together, and they just find the right times to like bait a fight and then kite it out, or just pick some weird skirmish. Obviously, game 1 they had the crazy Baron rush, but that's not easy to do. The way that they actually play is super hard. I don't think almost any other team can do what they do, even just as far as like piloting their champs and working together. So it's awesome to see.
There was one fight in game 1. I think it was actually like basically the final fight of the game near Dragon that I thought really impressed me with how T1 were playing it, where they're kind of just like bouncing in and out of the fight and almost like utilizing different people to pressure backline and to like push Pays out, because he's playing Ziggs, so they don't have like the Genji draft didn't have super consistent damage. And it just felt like there were so many low health bars over on the T1 side, but somehow they all are just like taking turns getting hit and putting on pressure, and they all are surviving, and the whole time Guma's being protected. and he's just autoing nonstop. And it feels like they are thousands of HP behind in the fight, and then all of a sudden they're turning around and winning. And like almost the same thing happened in game 4. And I kind of just really agree with you that it's these fights that look somewhat miraculous, and you're kind of like not sure how you're supposed to play them out, and then they just do.
I think they're really good at creating picks and using like high damage comps with low tankiness, which I think gives you that feeling of uneasiness, right? Because it's a comp that you're looking at and you're like, well, that's probably pretty hard to play. You know, you like really have to play around your spacing and your CC and stuff and your high damage. And for them to be able to pull that off a lot of the time, at least when they're playing well, you know, when they're losing, then it's easy to point at as well. But when you think of this roster of players at their best, I'm always thinking like so offensively, like high damage, high mobility, speedy, flashy engages, and like quick plays. And I think it was so cool that in a couple of series now, because at Worlds we got this like early like taste of T1 at Worlds, and everyone's like so ready to be like, whoa, it's T1 Magic at Worlds again. And then you're like, all right, calm down. It was just G2. And then they're like, they slam TES. They're like, oh my God, it's T1 Magic at Worlds. And you're like, calm down. TES looked pretty bad. They were underperforming, and like FlyQuest 4'd them in scrims and stuff too. And now we're like, well, T1 now. Or they beat Genji also. And you're like, okay, everybody's got to fucking like be on the train now. And it's like Faker's picking Ahri and getting picks all over the place, and like Carrier's roaming around. 2 Pyke picks, making picks himself. I mean, even when he was on the Renata, he was roaming mid to Faker's Yone to like help push out a whole bunch of times, even not to get picks, but like for pressure and stuff. So yeah, it's just it's a fun, like magical roller coaster that I feel like just most League of Legends fans in general are just ready to jump on and go along for the ride. I guess, when did each of you guys fully believe in the Magic at this Worlds this time? How early did you jump on board? Was it not until this series, or was it?
Oh, I was on in
back in the. It was back in Swiss. Yeah,
I was on when the music video came out, dude. Like, it was so sick. I think as soon as T1 made it to Worlds in the most stressful fashion of all time, and then Heavy as the Crown came out, and I watched it like 40 times in a row, and just like seeing Faker look so cool, I'm like, yep, they got to win now.
And Faker Azir comes out, and you're like, yes, my Emperor, you're back.
Yup.
Ready
like
to serve.
There was no other outcome. It was inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like no memeing was in Swiss stage, because I watched all this team, throughout playoffs. I watched so many of their games, and they were just struggling. And then they came out and they beat Top and they beat BLG, and I was like, okay, like they're actually good. They're actually going to be playing well, even though it was just some best of ones. But now, I thought they were going to lose to Gen G. Like my head still said that, and now it's just like, all right, all bets are off. It's just the T1 Magic, man, and it's hard to doubt it. I also got to say, as much as obviously there's like so much hype around the FlyQuest picks and everything, rightfully so, with all the meta defining picks, it's pretty cool to see T1 kind of playing their own stuff too, right? Obviously the Pyke is one of those picks that everyone's going to point to, but they're having success with other champions that other people really aren't as well. They obviously had the like Nico support game when they beat BLG. Ahri even was 1 win and 8 losses in the last 9 games at Worlds, if you discount Faker, and Faker hasn't lost on it yet. He's like 4-0 or 5-0 or something like that on it at Worlds. And so like they are making some of these picks work that feel like no one else is really playing. And it's cool, it's not just the play style. It is like their own take and their own approach on what the meta is. And yeah, I mean, I really agree with you, Meteos, where it's like so many of these games, I look at it and I'm like, nameplates off. I feel like T1 draft loses almost every time. And then it's like, oh, well, but it's T1 though.
Yeah. I mean, another one too is the Gragas top from Zeus, which I love watching him play this champion, because I think that Gragas top typically isn't, a fan favorite type champion because of just how he showed up in the meta most of the time. He's just kind of like tanky and nullifies lanes and kind of just makes nothing happen. But Zeus is doing like the cosmic rush, and he's so good at it. Like we talked about the first play of the series, that failed dive on him bottom, and when I was watching that, I thought he was 100% dead. Maybe he should have been, but just his decision making as far as, I think he started with a flash E onto Skarner to stop his follow up on the Leona CC. It's just so good. I mean, I think you put almost any League player into that same situation and they die 100% of the time. And he just makes it work on this champion. So that's really cool. Another one for me that's really impressive is Owner's Vi, because in a somewhat similar way, I don't think most people see Vi and they think, okay, that's a high skill champ. They think she presses R on you and that's it. But Owner does so much work on this champion. You talked about that fight at the end of game 1 where Owner was actually 3v1ing and making so much space and even killing people too. Mm-hmm. Something he does that I don't see very often is he flashes after ulting a lot, in the way that like he'll go on a carry, ult them, and then when everyone starts peeling him and they flash away and whatnot, he'll also flash away and then get ready to re-engage with his next Q, rather than just kind of the normal vibe of like flash, Q in, press R, hands off the keyboard, like somebody's dying here. So just, I don't know, man. It's magic. There's no other word for it. It's super cool. Hoping Owner picks Vi for his skin, because that would be sick.
His Vi, by the way, he's 5-0 on it. Everyone else at Worlds a combined 5-14.
Oh yeah. I mean, she hasn't looked good except when Owner does it. It's really impressive.
Because there's usually so much follow-up damage from T1. You know, kind of like you're saying how they like, create team comps and stuff. They go with some big follow-up. Also, I pulled up the BLG T1 game that they played earlier at Worlds when you guys were talking, because I just remember not only like the beginning of the game, the lane swap was good for T1, but the 4v5 fight that they pulled off at Baron, like BLG had gotten 2 picks and Faker was not there. He was walking from base. But the way that T1 team fight, the 4v5, and then they get 4 kills on BLG, and then they get the Baron afterwards, it's just like so impressive. The focus on like diving elk, focusing enemy AD carry, coming over the wall, using the blast cone. I am so hyped for this finals. It's pretty cool that they like played one game already in Swiss, like leading up to this, so you get like a little taste as well for finals. But on the other side, the reason why Bin is calling out T1, I want to play them, and he's calling out, I want to play against Zeus because Zeus is the other best top player in the world. BLG beat T1 at MSIs in the last 2 years, and this year and last year, both times in the best of 5. And so I think that also adds some more like a weight to both sides. Whereas like last year heading into finals, everyone had a little bit of kind of like dread. They're like, Weibo versus T1. I feel like that's probably going to be one-sided. This year, I think has really good potential from the like BLG side to add a lot to this narrative and make it even more epic of a finals, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like, no hate to Weibo, but as soon as BLG won, I felt like the finals were just guaranteed banger, right? Like either you get, Knight versus Chovy, which to me is 2 players who kind of have a very similar story, where they have, achieved the regional dominance, have won an MSI, but maybe don't get the same respect as some other players because they still haven't won a world's title yet. Or you get, the matchup that we got where it is, T1, like the most legendary team of all time, looking to two-peat, defending the title, 3 straight world finals. Like, I mean, there's just infinite history and storylines with T1. And, if BLG were to win against them, then it is one of those things where it's just like, in the promo today, where the whole Chovy thing about like, oh, you have to pass Faker to become the best kind of thing. Like it does feel that way, right? It's like if you win Worlds without beating T1, did you really win Worlds? Like did you? So I do think it's like it's really cool if BLG win, if Knight wins. I think he'll finally get more of that credit that I feel he really, really deserves, because to me, he is like a pretty like for everything he's accomplished. I feel like he's pretty disrespected as far as like how people talk about him, and even LPL. Like I could not believe. I showed this on the broadcast. I don't know if you saw this, Meteos. Kobe probably did, but the LPL did a vote like for all the people that work on their their league and everything. Like over 300 people voted, and they did like a top 10 all time. And Knight wasn't even on the list.
I did see that.
I thought that was crazy. Like this guy is tied for the record of most straight finals. He has tied for the record of like most titles all time. He's won 4 in a row. He has done it on 3 different teams. He's won MSI. He's like, a bunch of times like finals MVP, all pro, etc., etc. Like he's done everything except win worlds and has been running that league. Like for an LCS fan, I feel like he is doing regionally what Doublelift did to our league for a while, where it's just like, who's going to win LCS this year? Let's see, which team is Doublelift on? That's the one that's going to win. That's what LPL has felt to me lately, where it's just like, all right, let's see. Okay, Knight, yeah, you're on JDG. Okay, I think they're going to win. Oh, Knight's on BLG. They'll probably win. You know what I mean? Like that's how it has felt for a while. So I just think it's kind of criminal that this guy isn't talked about more among the greats. And if he were to win, I feel like that ends, and I feel like he gets that credit.
Yeah, it is interesting because I sort of feel similarly about Knight in that regard, where when I sit down and look at what he's done and think about it, it's like, yeah, he's a really good player, but he's not someone that just immediately pops into my mind either for like, this, when you think of the all-time great mids, right? Faker, Chovy, other worlds winners and whatnot, like Knight doesn't immediately stand out to me. So it would be really big if he could win. And I was thinking about the world trailer for the match today when you mentioned it, because like it was just so cool. And Faker's like, Chovy, if you're the future, then prove it. Like I went so hard.
Every line is such a banger. Like he's gotten so good at delivering those lines, I feel like, over the years, that it's just like, oh shit, Faker said what?
And then he won. And you're just like, oh my god. But
the T1 past, if T1 is the past, present, and the future line too, you're like, oh he's sick.
Insane. Yeah, on the BLG side of it though, if we're looking at their series coming into this finals versus Weibo, it's a lot of people were like, why do they keep getting Jack Skarner 1-2 and looking at draft and stuff, but like they absolutely dominated. And Knight, who you're talking about, dominated in pretty much every single game. The first game was Smolder, so it was like less flashy domination, but it almost was like, oh, he was like, Smolder's kind of boring. Yeah, I outscaled him. And next game, I'll pick my Syndra. We'll start on with that a little bit. And then he's like, oh, yeah, we'll pick some Akali that has not been winning very much at all at this tournament and completely styles on them. And you're just like, wow. The BLG are coming in off of a very dominant like series for themselves, and so like the confidence has got to be there. Of course, Knight was player of the series and everything, but I thought that like even though Shun got Skarner 3 times and everyone's like, yeah, Skarner's super OP right now, thought he was really good, setting up a lot of the engages for them as well. And so I feel like there's going to be an interesting clash with Shun and Owner, because both of them have been just such keys to both of these teams' front lines and playing those front line junglers. And then we're going to come down to like I would say the most epic matchup for top lane possible, which is Bin versus Zeus, and both of them recognize it and both of them talk about each other in that way. And as cool as it would be for Knight to get this recognition that you're talking about, like everybody already loves Bin and just wants to see Bin also have a world championship trophy, because then you're like, Bin is top lane GOAT. Mid lane GOAT is a very hard conversation because Faker's
there's only one name in the
so
conversation.
You're like, well, who's like the second GOAT then I have mid lane, right? But top lane is very wide open because throughout the history of League, there has not been, anyone.
Because T1 changes their top laner a lot.
Exactly. So like, like the longevity, I guess, for top laners, like, is the life expectancy, like your career life expectancy is not nearly as long. But when you look at Bin and you're like, he freaking got to finals right when he started, and in 2020, and you're like, this guy has been so good for his career already. If he adds a championship trophy to his career that still looks like it is going to keep going up and to the right, you're like, wow, there's like so many epic things that could come out of this. I'm so insanely hyped for that top lane matchup. Zeus is my favorite player on this T1 roster, and so I hope that we get to see some, like, Yones or other types of pickup there.
Best I can do is Gragas versus Nara, and it's a lane swap.
Yeah, I mean, Zeus has been really good on these tank picks for T1, which is really admirable. But I'm hoping for some more juice for the actual series.
Yeah, I'm curious how that top lane matchup's going to go, because Jax has just been such a prominent pick this Worlds. He's getting early picked in a lot of games, and it's one of Ben's most proficient champs, one of them he's really known for. But I think Zeus has pretty good responses to it. Like, Gragas is kind of a historic counter to Jax, just because it's so annoying to play, right? Like, you get stuffed if you ever try to jump on him, you get poked down, your laning phase is just uncomfortable. So I'm curious how that's going to go. Are they going to just handshake into that matchup? Is it going to be something completely different, maybe some like Rumbles or Nars or Renekton, whatever? I'm just really praying for some standard lanes. Like, the swaps are not it, man. You got like the best laners in the world.
Yep.
And their laning phase is getting dove 3v1. It's like, okay, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when you get to this stage, and it's the literal best players in the entire world, the people that can pilot their champions in a way that like no one else can do, you just want to see them go head to head, right? You want to see them battle it out and see kind of who comes out on top. And I think, while Bin has had a very good tournament for anyone else, I don't think that Bin has had an amazing tournament for Bin standards. Like, I don't think he has been as dominant as like he normally is. I think he's been playing well, but like Zeus to me is having a better tournament. I think Zeus has been exceptional, even by his standards, and I think Bin is obviously capable of being the absolute best in the world. But to me, he hasn't looked like as dominant. I think sometimes his decision making hasn't been as good. And to be fair, we haven't always gotten to see him in those 1v1 laning phases where he is so hard to beat. Like, talking to some top laners about playing against him, they're just telling me how the frustrating thing about Bin is not that like he's going to do something crazy or flashy and like cheese you, get a weird kill or anything like that. It's just that he never makes a mistake, and slowly you just see yourself losing the lane more and more and more and more, and it feels hopeless. Like, he wins every trade, he doesn't miss any CS, like he resets the perfect timings, he never can get ganked, he just like does everything right, and you just feel like you can't play the game.
That's tough. I feel like whenever a player has that kind of pressure to them too, is when they just start winning more by default, because their opponents feel like, if I just play normal, it's not going to work. I have to take some risks. I have to do something crazy, like make myself gankable, take this suspicious looking trade that's probably going to get me killed, all that stuff. And then Ben, just pulls more and more ahead. So yeah, I mean, dude, praying for some standard lanes for sure, but I don't know. We might just see more 10-man level 1 Raptor fights, which they're kind of funny, right? Like that's goofy for sure, but not what we like to see. But actually, I did want to mention, we were doing our predictions for champions that would show up at Worlds, and we did get the Elise in the Weibo game, and it wasn't very good. It was pretty bad, honestly.
But it was there.
It did get picked. It was there. It was there.
You did predict it. Actually, you deserve the credit there, Meteos. You got it. Well, we'll have to make a special dive award for you this year.
Let's go. Tarzan's, he was looking out for me. He's watching the dive. He said, "Oh, we're not going to win this series, but I can make Meteos right."
This one's for Meteos, as he goes out.
Yeah. As far as the top lane matchup and the Bin, I feel like Bin, because he like versus in the HLA series, he like was good both sides of the Gnar Jax matchup, and like I definitely have confidence in him in this series. So it's gonna be a banger for sure. Either way, I don't know if you guys want to dive even further into their series versus Weibo, or if you're fine with it being.
I mean, there's not that much to talk about. I will say, I think to be fair to Weibo, it was a 3-0, but I feel like the games were competitive, and I think that there was chances for Weibo to win, absolutely. But it just felt like, especially to me, the top side of the map. This one, as much as I think Elk has been the best AD carry in the tournament, I don't think Weibo versus BLG was about Elk at all. Like it really wasn't. It was about the top side. It was about the solo laners, just like outshining them in team fights. Shouldn't played really well, but there was like Knight stepping up in huge moments. I think Knight Syndra is the best in the world, and I know anytime I say that, I get some blame from LCK fans, telling me like, there's no way, Faker, Showmaker, they're way better. To me though, Knight, the way he plays Syndra is just so insane. Like he plays around Vision so incredibly well, and he always is playing over walls to like extend the scatter. Like he can actually push it further through, and he just is throwing scatters out from fog constantly. Like it's so common that you just see people playing and just stepping up and just throwing scatters out max range and trying to hit them. Like he's always playing to the side. Like, he's playing over the dragon wall. He's playing over the red buff wall. He's always taking these fights from angles that you can't see him coming. And he hits so many scatters that just decide fights and took over that game. And then when he's playing the Akali game, in that final game, I was really kind of not sure if the Akali was really going to be able to get that much done. Like they're playing against a comp that actually had a lot of AoE, a lot of ways to shut him down and even kill him in the Shroud. And then in that one fight over by the Dragon, he gets chunked down. He's at like 20% health, and Light was like actually had hit him with a few Qs and like shifts back, and it looks like Light is maybe going to win this 1v1. And he like flashes out of his Shroud, like gets the Q auto on him, hits him with an R, needs even the Storm Surge damage to proc and kill him, and basically has like exact lethal damage and like barely kills him, and that decided the fight. And I just thought that was so impressive that he just knew exactly like how much he could do in a situation like that, where I feel like so many other mid laners, getting chunked that low, being that much behind on HP would have just used R2 or flash away or whatever.
Yeah. And going off that, I've actually been a little bit surprised at the lack of Akali presence this Worlds, because she has been played a little bit with kind of mixed results, but in the games where she works, she just looks so strong, especially with Storm Surge being one of the best AP items. I remember in play-ins, we saw Maple do really well with it, and now we've actually seen Knight and Faker do well with the Akali, so I kind of expect her to be picked, more than we've seen in this finals, because so many of these fights, I just see Akali invisible one-shotting carries, which, most people who play League have experienced Akali when she's strong, and it's just not a good time if you're squishy at all. So I don't know if it's like, maybe it's the meta picks, like, she's probably not that great in stuff like Skarner, because he can just CC her so hard and not die, but I would like to see more of her, because she looks really strong when it works.
I mean, yeah. If we also just look at the last two Akalis we saw, looks OP as hell. I mean, the one Faker game and the one
For what
Knight
it's
game.
worth, those are the only Akali wins after play-ins, are those two games.
Really?
It lost every single other game, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, same with Vi and Ari and stuff, so
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
noobs
I mean,
picking it. It's noobs.
There you go. It's just
the
noobs playing these
player.
things. Like Zeka. That guy's terrible at Melee Champions. Like, why did he play?
Yeah, he's Zach who?
What is he thinking, bro? Get back on the control mage.
I mean, if you're going to be flaming people, and we're talking about the BLG Weibo series, Knight took a step up. Xiaohu took a step down.
Okay. What I want to say, though, in Xiaohu's defense, every single game he was ganked and killed by Bin. Like,
That's
this
what I was
top gap was unreal. This felt like I was watching Bin do one of those unranked to challenger things where you're just absolutely disrespecting and rolling over your opponent. I mean, it felt like Breathe was going into the series with the mentality of like, I'm just going to not die. I'm not going to let this guy get ahead of me. And Ben goes, okay, you're going to play safe? I'm going to leave. I'm going to just go kill everyone else, because which game was it? It was game 2 or 3 where Yeah, the Riverjacks, he killed mid and then just didn't even go back to his lane. He went top where the duos were and killed the support behind the turret as well. When I was watching, I'm just like, what is going on? Like, this is not what you see in pro play. Ben is just smurfing on them. It was so funny. So I did feel for Xiaohu because when you're laning against someone as good as Knight and then you're also just getting chain ganked by the top laner, it's, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I thought Ben was so good because I'm remembering the game that you're talking about is game 1 because I was like, oh, he also got the critical like catch on Xiaohu's Yone to like when the game was like looking a little bit dicey and they were actually like getting behind. It was towards mid lane. And then he did the one where he got chunked out at Baron. He teleported back in, went around the blue buff area. And to be fair, Xiaohu should have just like, as soon as he realized he was getting pinched, he should have just like ulted over the wall or even flashed over the wall and like gotten out of there. But he doesn't. And Ben comes around and catches him again right before the Baron. And you're like, bruh. I know everyone also memes on when Xiaohu was on the Lucian and like walked into the Ziggs minefield as well.
Dude, the Ziggs mines was crazy though. Like that was actually crazy because he's ulting. He walks into like 3 mines, then he backs up, walks forward into another mine, and then he's at 0 health. He stands there for a half second, and then he dashes into the last mine and dies. That was crazy.
What's funny though, the reason? It's because he sees Ben coming at his ass, and he's like, "Oh, the Jax is coming for me again."
He sees Ben.
Might as well give it to Ziggs.
What does he see Ben doing?
He's like, you know what? Maybe I could take that. It was definitely a funny one. But yeah, finals should be a definite banger. Should we take our little break now, fellas, or do we you got some more on this?
Yeah,
or we can do predictions.
A little bit break. We can take a little break.
Okay. Let's take
predictions. We'll take a quick break here, and then we'll be right back with more dive.
Hello?
Bro, what are you parking?
Seriously? What is that?
Remote smart parking assist. You could have parked anywhere.
They could have parked there. They could have parked there. They could have parked there.
Welcome back to the dive, driven by Kia. We are back. We're still talking about the World Finals here. And we've talked a lot about the semifinals and how those went. But the finals, of course, is T1 versus BLG. How are you guys feeling about it?
I mean, should we do predictions? Because I'm feeling super hype about it. I feel like both teams are coming in looking like they are the teams that are for sure supposed to be there. Like, this is our destined to meet up. If we're going to get BLG getting, like, Ben and Knight's first trophy versus Faker to try and get it over Faker. Ben specifically calling out T1 that he wants to go through them because he and BLG beat T1 at MSI both this year and last year in Best of 5 series. But then you have the most recent little piece of evidence of the Best of 1 here at this Worlds that T1 won. So now we also have like the super recent evidence going their way. I just like, this has got to be the best possible finals, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is peak. This is the protagonist meeting the final boss energy for sure. And I just really liked Guma's interview after their series today, where all of his answers were very concise, and they asked him about Ben's comments, and he just said, remember what I said last year, which was T1 doesn't lose to LPL or something like that. So I think it's going to be good. If I'm predicting, I'm T1 for sure. I'm a big Faker stan. I think they're going to take it. They're going to overcome their final boss and get another one.
Yeah, I mean it's so interesting, right? Because again, it's just like this head versus heart thing, and there's obviously the T1 versus LPL at Worlds record, which a lot of people are going to reference. So T1 has never lost a series to LPL at Worlds, but like personally, I don't really care that much about that because they also have lost to BLG exactly like this team at MSI, right? So I don't feel like
Not Worlds.
It isn't Worlds.
It's not Worlds.
And there is that like whole T1 aura, and they are kind of different at Worlds. So like maybe I'm foolish to ignore that a bit, but I don't know. I think it's really really hard because I do believe that for what I've seen over the course of the year, like BLG is the better team for sure, but T1 have looked incredibly strong at Worlds and kind of like defy logic in how they're able to perform at Worlds. So I don't know. I feel like an idiot to not predict T1 because it just feels like the plot armor is unbreakable. But at the same time, my head is still telling me, yeah, but BLG is going to win.
I think it's cool to look at like how they're gonna do it because even if I also end up predicting T1, which it'll make it seem like all three of us and it's going to be like, you know, it should be one-sided or something. It definitely shouldn't come across that way. But I think for me, if I'm examining a really critical point, I feel like support is actually where I would start, even though there's so many epic matchups that we already talked about earlier with, you know, Bin and Knight and Zeus and Faker and all these things. And Shun and Owner also being so critical for engages for both these teams. I feel like On was shown a bit off in quite a few moments, and Keria just looks like he is on a tear right now with all of these roaming supports just making plays all over the place, and it makes me feel like if there is like a support difference, then a support difference in this series would be really huge because of the way that he's approaching the map and just trying to affect all the other lanes too. I don't know. That combined with like how Guma has been good at being alone, and when Keria goes off to make plays, is like one of the pieces that I'm looking at. There's so many angles to approach this matchup from, but what do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying as far as support goes, because I think that's what makes T1 such a hard team to play against, because, you know, I think you can expect Zeus and Bin to be a very volatile matchup, right? I don't think either of these players is playing to go even. I think they're both going to try to win. And so when you've got such a strong bot lane in Guma and Keria, who they don't seem to try to pull resources toward their lane to dominate, but they just get prio and then let Keria do his thing. I think it was game 3 today. You know, you saw Keria leave out of base at level 4, pressure top lane, hit the vision cone, find the jungler in topside jungle, and then gank mid, and then head back bot. So that kind of movement from the support is just so massive for the entire map. It actually just disrupts the entire enemy team. Both their solo lanes get, you know, like their lane gets messed up a little bit, the jungler gets revealed, and then you're back bot, and you're still winning. So if Keria is able to do that, I think the game is going to be really hard for BLG to play.
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt like as soon as support meta becomes wide open, as soon as you can start playing weird stuff, Carrie's the best support in the world. And he can just play anything, right? Like when it's ADC meta and you can bring in mages and you can do engage, like if you can do the crazy stuff, I don't think anyone maybe ever has played those supports better than Keria has. And so I do think if they can kind of like make the meta a little bit crazy, if they can make bot lane a little bit spicy, then I do think he really has an advantage there. That being said, I will say that I feel like that strategy and that style, you know, especially the lane dominant style, like of playing ADCs and playing some of these mages that were really dominant in the 2v2, is kind of killed off by lane swaps, because it's like you draft for this like hard counter pick 2v2 and then they just swap and you don't really get to do that. Like your advantage then just becomes like a couple plates and they just kind of show up and then the game becomes like a farm fest. But he still can, you know, affect the map in with a roaming style, right? Like you're talking about Meteos, you know, maybe you can play Bard, or maybe you can play Pike, or you can play these different things and get out of lane. And I'd also say Guma deserves a lot of credit for how he plays in those situations too, because he's often given very little resources, I feel like, on T1, and still is able to find, a lot of success in team fights. Even in that reset that you were talking about in game 3, I remember Genji tries to pressure him, and they do force out his cleanse, but he actually ends up doing more damage to Pays than he took, and Genji couldn't even end up crashing the wave after it, because then by that time, Carry was coming back bot. He had gotten a big chunk because he was playing Varus, and I think it was maybe like against Ashe. I can't even remember what the ADC was, but I think it was Ashe. And he hit like a couple autos, and then hit an E, and then hit a WQ on the Ashe as he's running away. So they couldn't even get a crash because Carry would come down and they'd lose the 2v2. So like, I do think it's pretty impressive. If I'm going lane by lane, I don't know, or like position by position, it's like I favor Keria. I feel like Elk has been the best ADC in the tournament. I feel like I favor Knight individually over Faker. Honestly, probably Owner. I feel like Owner has been stellar. And then I favor Zeus. Like, I think Zeus has been better than Bin. So it's like, even going matchup by matchup, I feel like it's pretty even, like across the board. I don't look at one team and think, oh yeah, across the board these guys are just going to win. So it's really hard to say.
I think the coolest thing too is like the playmaking factor that has come up, because especially with people focusing on clutch at Worlds and all of the pressure of being in final, like we're going to finals, this is the peak of it. We're gonna have like mega opening ceremony and all these like theatrics going on. Like if pressure is ever something that you also judge teams by, because you can go like matchup by matchup, you can go like team synergies, coaching, in-game versus out-of-game prep, and then like bring in the pressure also. It's like, well, it feels like with clutch factor, everyone's gonna immediately go to T1 Magic, right? That's kind of like no brainer there. So that's like another thing that comes into it. And when you look at the series today from T1, in the final game, when they're just picking off Genji members left and right, like Canyon walks up on his Nidalee and Faker's like, all right, Ari dash over him, triple Ari dash right onto him point blank so he can hit this charm. And then right after that, Carrier's like, I got you. And he hooks in Lehens, and they get another pick on Lehens. And then like at the tower, he's like Maokai W's on him, brings him under the tower again. And you're just like, they're just like picking people over and over and over. And it just feels like there are going to be like a lot of other factors that also in the series that kind of like point that way with how they play. So I'm very curious to see also like first game of the series might to determine a lot for like confidence and momentum. For either side.
I could totally see that, especially if BLG lose game 1. Like if BLG lose game 1, I could actually see it being a stomp, where it's just like they get a little bit shook, because T1 just seems to not be phased. Like they just don't seem to get nervous, and I think it's crazy because even relatively early on with this roster, I felt like they really were able to play with like so much confidence in even these really difficult situations. Like it's not just Faker, right? Like it's the whole roster seems to really be calm in these situations. And even when you're looking at cams, like when you're looking at the player cams, like I always love looking at the players' faces and seeing how they're feeling in these situations. And like something bad happens and you'd see like a Genji cam and they'd like look kind of like devastated. They look like they're taking it really hard. Something bad happens to T1, they're just no response. Like no, you know what I mean? It's just like they're just like stone cold killers, man. They win, no response. They lose, no response. Like they're just like laser focused, and then they celebrate after they win the series. But like they just seem so unfazed, which I think is so important because it's such a mental game. Like all these players are stellar. All these players are capable of winning a world championship. All these players can carry a game, can take over a series. But if you get in your own head a little bit and you start getting a little bit nervous, you start doubting the way you want to play, you start making mistakes, then it can all fall apart so easily. And like at this level, I truly believe it's like 90% mental and 10% hands, because all these players are incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, they've always just had this X factor to them, like you were saying, the confidence. And that's something that I don't know how you ever get that if you don't have it, right? That's just something that, it's there or it's not. Can't fake it. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm hoping we get 5 games.
Yeah, me too. I do feel like Ben also, like Ben I'm like, he definitely has that Ben definitely has the confidence. I'm
He's
like,
got it for sure.
if there's one player I'm for sure also locked in on that he's also gonna have it, I'm like, Ben for sure has it. I mean,
Yeah, the thing I'm a little concerned
Oh.
about for BLG is because their jungle situation's a little weird, right? They were playing with was it?
Way.
I always get them mixed up. Was it Wei or Wei?
Wei.
It was Wei. Yeah, dude, that's crazy. They have like just the same name, but twice. Yeah, and they switched him out for June like midway through the tournament. So that's usually not a good sign for a team, but they have looked a lot better since they swapped.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in the LPL, they were playing with Shun, and he was kind of considered more like wild card type jungler, right? Like he could pop off, or he could have like really inconsistent performances. Like he was more that like wild carry style or whatever. And so they brought in Wei, and he was supposed to bring them like more consistency and more stability. And that's why they swapped him. Then obviously they lose these couple best of ones, and they decided that it was really concerning. They had to swap something up, so they put in Shun. And I just think it's been interesting. Like obviously, yeah, I'm sure he's still scrimming with the team and everything, but I do think there's a tremendous amount of pressure when your team is down 1-2 as they were when he, swapped in, and they have basically just gone on a tear since he's been in. So he is deserving of a lot of the credit for that. And he hasn't even been playing like, I think, just his signature style. Like he hasn't been playing crazy and high variance. Like he did have some really impressive individual games. Like he did get to bring out his signature Kindred, and he won on that. But like, you talked about it, Kobe, today. He's playing Skarner, which to me is like that stable champion, that like supportive champion. And he was playing really, really well. So like he clearly can play that control style. And I think he's just been performing so well.
Yeah, I also remember because especially it was such a big topic for BLG with Shun ganking bottom a lot. And remember when we were like coming into MSI and stuff, there were
The planned dives.
we had so much tape of them being like, oh man, their bottom lane is so good. Look at them build up this big wave and play exactly on Shun's timing. And Shun gets down there and it's like they dive bottom and play so much around bottom. And then when they initially like switched over to Wei, then it did feel like they like spread a little bit more to like, ooh, now we gank some more for Bin too, topside some, and for Knight a little bit some, and so like kind of spread it out. Now since Shun has come back in, I feel like it's, he's kind of doing like a lot of things, like, and all things, and so it feels like they've been able to like both grow together. And Wei had a good interview where he talked about like, yeah man, we're both good, like it was earlier in the tournament, and they were like both scrimming, and either of us, can play and can do well. With zero extra insight, I'm also like, I'm on the Meteos tram where I'm like, it makes me nervous when any players swap in and out and like sharing scrim times when scrim time is a very like finite resource. But yeah, I think Shun has been quite good, and it's interesting, kind of like I said, where I feel like him and Owner are playing like very critical, like engaged roles here for the frontline jungles. It was interesting that Owner also pulled out a Kindred game, and I'm like,
Okay,
I definitely
that draft was a world skin draft if I've ever seen one. Give Skarner first pick to take Kindred Caitlyn. When I saw it, I was like, no, that's not real, man. I don't know what they were cooking with that one.
Kindred's my most played champion. I'm not mad at it. Maybe I'll get a either way, I could get a Kindred skin out of this world,
If it comes down to a Kindred off, then we go with the Shun side. Yeah, but I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really exciting. I mean, I don't know. If I have to make a prediction on broadcast, who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind because there's still a week before. But right now, I just feel like I just can't predict against T1, man. Like, it doesn't even matter what my eyes see or my brain tells me. It's just like, yeah, T1's just going to win. Like, it's just, they just feel like they are on that run. They just feel like they have the magic. And I know those predictions people just hate, but it's just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. When they do it every single year over and over and over and over and over again, and they, keep winning, in quarterfinals, they never miss out on semis. They've never lost more than one game in Swiss. At a certain point, you just have to be like, yep, okay, the rules don't apply to them. That's just what happens. Like,
and they're legitimately like playing really well at the tournament right now.
Yeah, they're playing incredible. All right. Well, we also want to talk about some off-season roster moves and some other things that are going on. Mentioned it earlier, really briefly, but Ruler did that got announced that he's parting ways with JDG, which is obviously very big news. JDG last year, like we're kind of close to the Golden Road sort of style. They were on that, couldn't obviously complete it, but Ruler, one of the greatest AD carry players of all time, and there's a lot of rumors and consideration about like, oh, well, where would he go? Because if you guys remember, when he actually first left the LCK, when he left Gen G to go to the LPL, he like did this stream where he had this emotional stream where he was talking about, oh yeah, I'm going to China, but like I never wanted to leave Gen G. I only wanted to play on Gen G in the LCK. I never even considered going to any other LCK teams. I still want to play in Gen G after I return. And so now a lot of people are like, ooh, like is Ruler coming back to Gen G? And I think as much as Pace has played really, really well, the fact that Gen G didn't win, and hasn't won Worlds, without him and everything, like I feel like a lot of people would be very excited for him to go back to Gen G. But obviously it's Ruler, and there's like a lot of teams that would love to have him.
Yeah, that is that does seem like it would be a really good pickup, but like you said, I don't know how much better is he than Pays. It's because he's been playing well. I feel like maybe the support, like I could see Gen G maybe wanting to try different support, because Lehen's was for sure a weak point this Worlds. He's known for kind of being a wild card type player, and I think support is a role where when things are going well, you look really good, and when things are not, you might look like a dirty enter. And that was certainly the case for him today, at least. So, maybe they'll find Ruler with a sick duo and, potential bot lane upgrade. Hard to say. It's all just speculation for now.
Yeah, we actually talked a little bit about this on broadcast today because the information like just dropped, and this was before the series, and I was like, oh man, it's actually so crazy because Ruler was like, I want to end my career on Gen G. At the time, I was like, but that spot is filled. And then after you see the results though, and like you're saying, kind of looking at bottom lane, now you're like, how filled is filled? I don't know. It's like you're saying, it's all speculation, but Ruler is definitely a hot commodity. And I, for one, think that he is actually going to go to Cloud9. So that's where I'm going to put my money. Come
That
on
would
over,
be a
Ruler.
crazy pickup.
Arms are wide open, baby.
That would be a pretty sick pickup.
Come on over here. Yeah? You guys like
I like where your head's at. I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to talk about the other C9 roster, like rumors and stuff that's going on right now, because it's pretty cool if you want to talk about those.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the last thing I was going to say about the Ruler thing is it does feel really bad in some ways to speculate about, like Pays, this young player, like you could get replaced by Ruler even though you beat T1 like 10 times in a row because you lost this one at Worlds. Like, time to pack your bags, buddy. Like it is crazy, but the reality is like when the teams get to a certain level, they've won regionally so many times, and the goal becomes about beyond that. So like, any tiny little percentage gain that they think they could get could end up costing you your spot. But as far as the C9 rumored rosters, the roster that is rumored right now is Thanatos and Blabber. Topside, they have potentially or are rumored to be picking up Loki, who is an LCKCL player, and then Sven would be returning to Cloud9 as an AD carry, and then they would keep Vulcan. So obviously, the big news would be Loki, and I think it's definitely interesting. Like I was talking to Chronicler about him, and asking a few people what they kind of thought about him, because I think it's not a player that like I had really heard much about. I don't really watch LCKCL or anything like that, to be honest. So it is interesting, but from what like Chronicler was telling me and from what people were telling me, it wasn't really like inspiring that much hope, I guess, because I feel like no one is selling him to me as this like incredible prospect. People were kind of telling me that he's basically like maybe like a fourth, fifth, best bin later in LCKCL. That like he's not this big prospect like Thanatos was. And he's not like a player that's necessarily going to fix some of the issues I think Cloud9 had, which were like, macro issues maybe and things like that, or where they weren't necessarily on the same page and whatnot. Like, I guess I'm a little bit confused by the signing because he doesn't seem to be like a super hype prospect. He doesn't seem to have a super dominant laning phase or anything. And you have another young player that like could maybe exacerbate some of the issues that you already have.
Yeah, I kind of like followed up a tiny bit since it's still just a rumor. But I talked to Chronicler and some other people and like kind of similar things around fourth place. The one thing he also said was like, "Oh, but you guys also got Quid, and Quid was not even considered like fourth in CL, and that actually ended up turning out well. Of course, it did take some time, for him to get there. Of course, like the
first year was really rough.
First season was definitely rough, so maybe it's something like that. This is one of those things where it's like, all right, let's contact Cloud9 and ask them about what scouting. Show me the VODs also. So we can also evaluate. But there's clearly something that they saw in their scouting, and like just looking at his stats from challengers, it's like, okay, most played are Azir, Yone, Tristana, like Corki, Talia. That seems like a pretty diverse, as far as like types of champions to play, which I think is usually a pretty promising thing. So yeah, we'll wait to see on that one. Of course, like the sad part about it is I feel like most people are pretty sad to lose Jojo. I know that the thing about like being late and all that stuff like came out, and some people are like, forget it now. But I'm like, man, I'm sad to lose Jojo. I had a bit of a moment when I saw him, like, because Jojo posted, if you look at his Twitter, like a picture of himself super young, like he looks like this little kid, and he's like going off to Mad Lions in Europe, and I kind of felt like we're like sending off one of our NA children to go like to a new school, and I'm like worried for him, but I'm gonna support him over there. So I actually think it's gonna be kind of cool to have like an NA player to support in EU now. With the like Jojo departure, but I'm also pretty sad that we as LCS are gonna lose Jojo because he's a very good mid laner that I feel like pushes a lot of other mid laners, especially him and APA have a really close relationship. So that is also kind of influencing my kind of I guess the like perspective of the pickup of Loki and the pickups that you went over for this entire Cloud9 roster. Where if you look at this whole like rumored roster, to me, I would say none of these new rumored rosters are going to be able to take down TL or FlyQuest. I feel like the Shopify, by the way, rumors is the other team we're getting rumors for, and that's like the Fudge, Niski contracts signings that are also still rumors. I think the Niski stuff was like leaked on like Discord DMs or something. But yeah. What do you guys feel about the other ones?
Well, I just want to chime in a little bit on Cloud9 because going off rumors, the roster that is rumored, I like it because, if it involves Sven, I just think Sven is one of my favorite people in the LCS, and even when he was on Dig this past year, it just felt weird to me. Anytime I saw Sven, like he was on Cloud9 for such a long time, and I think he was a really big part of the culture there. So I think if he comes back, that would be awesome. And with picking up a promising Korean prospect, I think there's always some uncertainty for how it goes, just because, most players in the pro Korean league or challengers, they're very good mechanically, but so much of being able to, move to a totally different country, very different culture, different language even, there's always the question of how well will you be able to communicate, how comfortable are you going to be in game. Those things play a big part too. So I think that Cloud9 is usually a really good team for acclimating players to make them feel comfortable, but even so, I think there's still always going to be, some factors that like you won't really know until you get there and everyone plays together. But I will say that I think that C9 has had a culture of just, wanting to put in a ton of effort and try really hard. Has kind of been their thing for a long time. So, like, getting big grinders. So I think that probably with the, rumors of Jojo being late to everything always, that probably, like, didn't really rub off on the rest of the team very well. Because, when you have a team whose whole thing is like, we want to be disciplined, you're like doing morning workouts, everyone's putting in all their effort, and you just have someone who's like perma late, like that, I think that could be kind of tilting. So I think with this new roster, they're kind of trying to go back to that, like, everyone's just putting in maximum effort thing, and I think it should be good. But we're gonna have to see, because like you said, Jojo was a really good player, and I think that the fact that Cloud9 didn't make Worlds is actually so crazy, because honestly, they probably would have done fairly well at Worlds. They did well pretty much the whole year, and just randomly decided to pick Ivor and LeBlanc against 100 Thieves and didn't qualify. So that's definitely going to leave a pretty bad last impression in everyone's mouths of them. But, I think it would not be a good idea to bet against Cloud9.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
it'll be interesting. Like the other part of this, though, is the reality is there's going to be one less world slot for NA, right? So, you have to account for that as well, right? Like, there's not going to be 3 teams. It's only going to be 2. So you do have to kind of look at it from the lens of, like, do I expect this team to be better than FlyQuest and TL? And if you don't, they're not going to Worlds, right? So I think that is the reality of kind of some of the difficulty of this. And other teams are going to be trying to upgrade their rosters as well, which is going to make things potentially more difficult too. The only thing I want to say on the Jojo thing too is, like, I don't want to get too into it, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel a little bit weird about all this stuff about, like, his work ethic being kind of extrapolated from the stuff that, he was late. Because, like, Rigby, his former coach, tweeted vouching for him. Peter Dunn was tweeting vouching for him. They were saying, like, basically it's like more like a health issue, right? Like, he needs time in the morning, and that is like a health issue, and that they accommodated for him to have that extra time in the morning, and then they had no problems. And so to me, it's like the him being late thing, it's like, should he be planning for that himself? Yeah, probably. But also, like, should Cloud9 be, working to kind of like find a solution with your player if it's a consistent issue? Yeah, probably, right? Like, so it does feel like a little bit, it can't all be on the player at a certain point. Like, it's kind of on both people. And from what I had heard, like, it may be related to a health issue, which just makes me feel bad that is, like, now this narrative that the player is being labeled with, if that's true. Because, like, that feels rough to have this, like, stigma that's falling around. It's like, oh, he's just this lazy player. When, I was kind of curious about it. So I went and I was talking to a number of different people, and, like, from what I've heard, he's, like, a pretty hard worker. Like, he's not a big solo queue grinder, but he is someone that is, like, grinding VODs all the time and, like, watching every single, game and replay of who he considers to be the best mid laners in the world, and, like, doing 1v1s and doing all these different things. So, I definitely wish him well. I'm sad that he's leaving the league. I think he's one of the most talented young NA players we've ever had in the league. And I maintain that I think he was the best individual laner in all of the LCS. So, like, I think, he is a really, really strong player, and I'm sad he's leaving. As far as like that goes, I wish him well on MDK, and I hope he does well, and hope they do well, in Europe, and then we can take all the credit.
Exactly.
Europe's importing NA. It's the only way they can win.
Boosted by a Canadian. Classic.
What's fun is, though, I'm actually, like, way more excited to watch more LEC games, because I'm going to be cheering for Jojo,
Yeah. It'll be cool. There's also some other rumors that are going around with the Shopify top side that is being rumored that they're picking up Fudge and Niski and Contracts, which is pretty cool. Definitely felt like Contracts deserved, a spot on a good team. Even though things obviously didn't work out on Energy at the end. Definitely felt like Fudge also kind of got unfairly blamed a little bit for kind of everything after his stint ended with Cloud9, and I'm glad that he's going to be given another shot. I'm interested to see how that works out. And if Niski is coming as well, like, that's going to be really interesting. Like, I know Niski hasn't been, like, as individually strong, I think, lately, but he was always a player that I was really impressed with, and I think partially he's another one of those players that I felt like doesn't get as much credit because his style is very much like, you know, enabling his team and playing the map and like less playing for the 1v1, especially in the past. Like when he was on Cloud9 and NA, I always felt like he was kind of criminally underrated because he'd be playing like Talia and just like pushing and roaming, and he wouldn't have these massive CS advantages, and he wouldn't be like solo killing his opponents, but he'd be like winning his side lanes for his team. And I always felt like he was like a really effective mid laner, even if he wasn't that kind of like prototypical style where he's just like solo killing the enemy player and, you know, dominating the 1v1. So I think that would be pretty cool to see that that Shopify lineup, because I think they would have, you know, at least a really strong top side. But I don't know what the rumored bot lane is. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about that.
Might still
I
be,
haven't heard.
Yeah, might still be B-Boy or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, B-Boy was
Yeah.
really good still.
Yeah, he looked good, and I just agree with you guys are saying about Spotify. I need to stop doing that. I can't ever. It's too confusing. Shopify. Sorry, Shopify. I'm excited about their lineup because I mean it's all good players, right? Fudge, Contracts, Niski. They've all had a lot of success before, and it's just a reality that like this last split, Fudge didn't have a team because there's only so many spots for so many players, and with new players always on the come up, it can be hard to find a team. So it's cool these guys found a team, especially with the league shrinking a little bit. Well, sort of. So I'm happy we see them again. And yeah, I mean, I'm wondering what the meta is going to look like this next year, because one thing that I always had in the back of my mind for this whole year was it was honestly like off-brand League of Legends gameplay a little bit, in the sense that we just had like 80 carries mid, rushing tank items every game, lane swaps everywhere. It was kind of like, it was weird League, where now at Worlds we're kind of back to the League we all know, and that shows up in solo queue with like assassins and mages and stuff showing back up mid, and T1 winning everything. So I'm interested to see how TL adapts to that, because, you know, like we've said before, APA isn't someone who's super known for playing melee champs. They were really good at the 2024 meta, but, you know, I think we'll be in for some big changes, and interested to see how they do with it.
I hope that Niski can come back in a big way, because he was having a rough time on SK and EU. I definitely know, but he's definitely a player I loved rooting for when he was over here, and I really like his play style for mid. So hopefully they can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I have, just on the APA thing, honestly, I have faith that this guy is going to be able to learn whatever the meta is, because he came in and everyone was basically saying like he's trash, doesn't need serve a spot, blah blah blah. He was obviously already good on mages. Then, you know, year two, people were like, he can only play 80 carries. He's only good on that. It's like, well, he couldn't play that before, and now I know, you know, it is kind of going to like, well, he can't play melee champions. But at the end of the day, you know, like this was a guy who was able to learn and polish some of these other things and bring them in pro. So like I have confidence they can do that. And I do know that even though people are going to look at the like Liquid game and things like this and just like meme it and say he's bad on melee champions, at the very least, I know he played like a lot of melee champions when he plays solo queue, and those are some of like his favorites to practice on. Like he's like a lot of Clegg games, a lot of Pantheon games, like a lot of these style champions. So I have faith that that, you know, if TL maintains the same roster and maintains everything, like when they're working that hard, I think the players are going to continue to improve and be able to kind of like round out their game.
Yeah, I don't doubt them at all, but it'll definitely be a new task for them to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, right? Like, you just never know what's going to come with preseason. And sometimes you have ones that are smaller changes, and sometimes you have ones that are, like, absolutely giant changes, and the whole game shifts, right? So, definitely, I think that kind of makes it exciting. And it makes it feel a little bit more, like, unknown, because the favorites might not be the favorites anymore, and so on, if it's a big enough shift. Plus, with only 2 spots, I feel like it's going to get ultra competitive for Worlds. You know, if you're talking about, like, oh, okay, if the Shopify roster is going to be competitive, and then you have, obviously, like, TL and Fly are going to be big favorites, you have C9, and you're already talking about, you know, 4 rosters competing for 2 slots, and that's only, you know, half the league. So There would be a lot of other teams in there that are trying to get things going too, like 100 Thieves. Obviously they made it to Worlds this year. People are going to be, obviously not expecting them to do it, but this is the rookie year for Sniper, and if he can continue improving, and if Quinn and River are playing really well, like I just think that there are going to be a lot of different teams that are going to be in the mix, and to me, that's always when the LCS is the most fun to watch, right? When you don't actually know who's going to win, and when it doesn't feel like that foregone conclusion, it's just like way more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Sweet. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Dive. Kobe's got to eat. I bet you are hungry, Kobe. You worked a long, hard day. You came back. You're doing The Dive with us, so we appreciate you. And thank you, Meteos, for staying up, because I know it's pretty late there. It's or no, is it early?
Noon?
I don't even know what it is. Never mind.
It's
not
noon.
late.
I've
All
made
right.
it till noon.
Oh wait, did you? Oh yeah, you stayed up the whole night, and then so it is late. It's just late in a
No.
different way.
I'm on a normal sleep schedule. I'm waking up early.
Oh, you are? Wait, but don't
Yeah, I'm
the
going to
games
bed at like
start at
8
like
p.m.
5 a.m.? Oh,
Yeah, it's rough.
okay.
It's rough.
That is rough. That's rough for gamer hours for sure. So
Yeah.
good job. Good job. We're proud of you.
Thank
Keep
you.
it up. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Dive, driven by Kia. We're going to be back next week after finals. We're going to have one final episode to wrap things up for this year of Worlds. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else. Make sure you send us your final questions on Twitter. Use the hashtag TheDiveLOL. We maybe are going to grab some of those for the episode next week because we're only going to have one series to have talked about, and we'll have no more series coming, obviously, until the following year. So if there's anything you want us to talk about on that episode of The Dive, definitely let us know. Worlds continues this Saturday, November 2nd at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. BLG is going to take on the defending champs T1. Make sure you tune in and remember that's Saturday, not Sunday. I know it's been Sunday a lot in the past, unless I'm absolutely tripping, but it is Saturday this year, so we'll see you there.